that was a coach in the NCAA with Coastal Carolina, the face of the biggest lack of leadership in the history of college sports, and he gets an extension. A year later, he's no longer going to be there. Now he's a lame duck, speaking of Emmert. I think that borders on unethical. Whoever put that contract together, I understand Emmert taking advantage of what they gave him or give him, but that's a horrible executive decision. The guy hasn't done his job.
Yeah,
that's not breaking news. But that's a quote from Joe Mowgli. Again, he'll be a guest tomorrow at 4 o'clock.
Did you see when he announced, or there was announced that he was going to be leaving, the absolute mass celebrations that took place across college athletics? I mean, that tells you all you need to know. That wasn't just one or two fan bases going, good, I didn't like that guy. That was basically everybody who's a fan of college athletics going, thank God he is gone.
From the top down, yes. President. I mean, like,
what does that tell you?
Athletic directors, coaches, like,
And if you ask me to name one thing Mark Emmert really did in his tenure, I would have to sit and actually think about it because I don't know. I only know him by name because he was for a little while the president of the NCAA apparently, but I could not tell you a single thing that he was responsible for or a part of. I'm sure I've read an article where he was involved in negotiations for one thing or another, but for the most part,
he screwed up how many millions they should have gotten with television money as well.
But ultimately, even things that he did were the wrong decisions to make, and so I mean, we could bag on them all day. There will probably be a 30 for 30 on just the downfall of it all.
I think so. Maybe an 80 for 80 or
the foundation
100 for 100.
The foundation is crumbling. There's debris constantly falling every other minute, and I think that's apparent to everybody. And as I just saw, Jim Phillips from the ACC had a comment just a moment ago that came across my feed. He's on the NCAA Transformation Committee. He said, a trimmed-down NCAA with more authority but more responsibilities will fall on conferences and more is going to fall on institutional level. That's what he sees as being the future of the end of the trimmed-down NCAA is more responsibilities on conferences and more falling on institutional levels.
And by the way, Dr. Livingstone of Baylor's on that same transformational committee as well.
Let's just when he says falls on the institution, let's use the example that we know the best of, the Baylor scandal. Most of the punishments that Baylor suffered were not from the NCAA. It was from the immediate departure of recruits, the immediate firing, the institution, Baylor.
And their conference.
Were much harder on Baylor than the NCAA was. Yep. And that was pretty darn effective in the short term. I mean, it was immediate. It wasn't 5 years down the line, 6 years down the line.
They took a baseball bat to both knees. And I know that some people are still mad about Baylor getting fined. They were fined. They got most of that back and all that. But, I mean, they took it to them. The conference said, the hell with this.
But if you
whether you like it or not, that's
if you want a historical example of where there was a scandal, there was immediate repercussions for everyone involved, coach, athletic director, president, the whole recruiting class left, all of those things happened, plus fines from the conference and different things on down the line, then that's probably the starting point. There's probably some more effective things you could have done to a school like Baylor in the short term.
You think conferences, though, will do that to their own in other places?
I think if they've got the power to do it and there's no other place for those schools to go, what are they going to do? Was West Virginia going to be like, we'll leave?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about most conferences normally take care of their own.
No, you're right.
And you're going to give them the power then to scold or penalize their own. That's going to be interesting.
I don't trust the SEC doing it.
That's what I mean.
I don't trust, I don't really trust others to do it, but I don't trust the NCAA. So what's the difference? Well, I mean, at least that we know there would be some level of accountability because I know who the commissioner of the SEC is. I know who the commissioner of the Pac-12 is. I know who the Big 12 is eventually going to have another commissioner, and we'll know who that is. And, we knew who Mark Emmert was, but outside of just hearing his name pop up, could you pick him out of a police lineup? I mean, could you really say that you know anything about this dude? No, of course not, because he's just a figurehead. He's just a dude that basically just did nothing for years, picking up a large paycheck. But I think the fact that a commissioner is going to have these multiple fan bases that will raise that heat, I think that could play into it, but that would play into it being more accountable. But certainly, you do have to worry about conferences looking out for their own and trying to alleviate any strict punishments that could hurt the conference as a whole. So that would be a little bit of a concern. But I mean, compared to what it is right now, it's not all that different.
I agree, but you're right. You hurt somebody in your conference, you're hurting yourself. It's kind of.
But if they deserve it,
they damn sure did it in the Big 12, so you could do it elsewhere if you wanted to. Now, here's a couple of things.